All right, welcome to Automate Live, where we have a lot of conversations around robotics, new technologies that hit the factory floor, the warehouse. But for this conversation, we're going to go, I'm going to say off track, ironically, because we're going to be going on track with the application we're talking about. We're talking about the fastest autonomous race car. So we are joined by three panelists that are going to take us through this story. We've got Marc Ferlet to my left, we got Erik Saelens, and we also have Kristof Lowyck. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here.
Thank you.
So the first question I have to ask is, where did this whole, I'm going to call it a project, that might not be the right word for it, where did this whole project get started? Marc, maybe you start off and then pass it to the next person to continue the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Indy Autonomous Challenge actually started in Indiana, right? Also known as the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis. It hosts the IMS, right? The Indy 500. Everybody knows the Indy car, and it has a big heritage in motorsport. Now, it came from an observation on autonomy, seeing that most of the use cases in the market today were suburban or urban, low-speed taxis, robo-taxis. Now, that meant that very little research and development was being done on high-speed applications, and that any hopes of seeing autonomous vehicles on highways, transporting people, transporting cargo, transported perhaps mission-critical payloads between two cities with no airport infrastructure, was being done. So we decided to use the same blueprint as, and maybe the viewers will be familiar, the DARPA Grand Challenge, right? Which is essentially gathering universities from across the world and putting them in a competition setting to research and develop the fastest AI driver. And we did that with a prize competition that we held inaugurally in 2021 with a $1 million prize, where at the beginning 41 universities gathered to compete to build the fastest AI driver.
Excellent. So this is a relatively new challenge. I like that you were looking at all these other, I don't want to call them slower applications, but they literally are slower than the application that you're working with right now. Let's go down the other end. Kristof, how did you get involved with this project as well?
Well, actually, it happened in December. There was a visit of the Mr. President of Flanders to Indiana, to the governor of Indiana, Erik Saelens. And actually, that's how I got to know these guys at the table. And we more or less immediately hit it off. And they explained to me that it was more than just the race car and the racing. It was a platform for development. Actually, with AI applications, possibly autonomous AI over time. And that's exactly what is interesting for Flanders. I don't know if everyone knows Flanders and Belgium.
Yep.
But we do have we do have an ecosystem of research institutions, of colleges, of companies that are really into that AI component. And that was what triggered me. Was like, okay, this is a development platform. You guys are developing and actually accelerating research. We want to have part of that. We want to be involved. We actually want to bring to the table what we have to offer and maybe collaborate in a sort of transatlantic friendship, because that's exactly what it was. So with that visit in December, that was an MOU between the state of Indiana and Flanders.
Yeah.
And this is one of the very concrete initiatives that implement that MOU. So I'm all for it. So this is going to be actually the story of a friendship between the state and Flanders.
I love that. And, Erik, I want to have you expand on this as well, too, because I think you understand this relationship really well. Like, why Belgium? Fill me out. Because I'm the host of a podcast called Manufacturing Happy Hour. I love Belgium for the beer especially, but I want to hear this from, let's say, the technology and business standpoint.
First of all, thank you very much for having us. When you look at what the Indy Autonomous Challenge is doing, and I've been involved for many years in there, it's not about what we would say AI-driven automation. This is autonomous AI. So it's about creating life in a way. Now when you do these things, regulatory framework becomes very important. Now when you look at Belgium, it's true that we are known for soccer, at the wheel football, beer and chocolate, but the reality is that Belgium hosts all the decision-making bodies of the European Union, obviously European Union, but also NATO. In terms of intellectual capital, Belgium has per capita the highest level of top engineers. And also that's also what explains why IMEC, which is the world's leading semiconductor company, it's based in Belgium. It's a Belgian research institute, right? It's actually
Absolutely.
a Flemish one. So when with the board of EIC we were discussing where are we going to take this for civil applications. I'm not talking military, I'm talking civil applications. Obviously because I live in Belgium and I spend my time between the States, Belgium and some other parts of the world, I said, let's go to Belgium. So following the visit of our Minister President Jan Bon, and obviously all the people that then got involved, we said, okay, we want to land this here. So I'm pretty confident that when we sit here next year, we will have landed what we call the civil application spin out of this organization in Belgium, headquartered actually in the HQ of Europe, where there are massive also, and that brings me to another point, next to intellectual capital, regulatory framework, Belgium also hosts the most beautiful Formula One track in the world. It's Spa-Francorchamps. It's the only natural Formula One track in the world. We also have a former military base that today is known as Droneport, which is one of the few places in Europe where you can have free testing in drones. But they have a strip, I think, 4 kilometers, like 2.5 miles, which is very interesting for us to do tests with the car. And Marc can elaborate on that in terms of when you have something that operates fully autonomous, you only have one button, it's a stop button.
Yeah.
All the rest you simply can't control it. You know, it's not AI-driven automation. It actually thinks for itself, it creates life.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, talk about that.
There's a stop
It's
button
super interesting
and a
topic.
start button, very important. But the key part about Belgium, right, as both of you have said so well, is that we have a lot of teams from around the world, right? So we have teams from Korea, teams from Italy, teams from Canada, from the US, teams from Germany. Having Belgium, and I've lived in Belgium, I've lived in the US, I've lived in many places, but Belgium is known for being neutral. It's the place where all of Europe convenes, right, to make decisions, to operate as a bloc. It's the perfect place to actually establish a hub for automation and autonomy on that continent. It will also allow us to actually involve more universities, not just from the US, but also from the rest of Europe, who will have now the means to access the track for training, perhaps different categories of vehicle. Because it's important to say, you know, right now our car is an Indy Light car, right? That's a very American car. However, there's lots of other use cases to be done by taking civil cars or even endurance cars like Le Mans prototype cars, which are great to find in Europe, right? That has a natural home in Belgium with the Spa track right next to Le Mans. So it's really a match made in heaven.
Yeah, so you've got the access infrastructure, you've got the innovation infrastructure for all of this. So we've jumped over to Belgium. We probably need to jump back to Indy for a little bit to kind of understand how this contest has gone down so far, because I think the listeners are going to want to understand what that story has been so far. So, Marc, maybe provide some context as how many universities have been involved in, I'm going to say, programming this fully autonomous race car?
Sure. So, I mean, I'll give you how it is right now. We have 10 university teams made up of 259 PhD students, right? All working with each one car, so they have 10 cars, 10 teams, right? Some universities will join up forces to buy a car because they have to purchase the car, which is not a small expense, right? So it's usually tier 1 research universities participating. I'll give you examples. We have MIT, we have Berkeley, we have University of Auburn, UVA, Michigan State University, right? And I'm just naming a few. So to the universities watching, I'm not making any favorites. I'm just, saying the ones on top of my head.
Sure.
Now, the important part about this and how it works is essentially through a series of events that we call Indy Autonomous Challenges, right? And they can happen in the US. They happen every year at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, right? And they happen every year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, the next race coming up is on September 6th, right? On that day, the 10 teams made up of all these universities will compete for a $1 million prize, right, in a passing competition. So that's how we actually test who has the fastest software and who has the fastest AI driver. Now, it's important to understand that all these cars are constructed identically.
Right.
Right? So they have a whole set of sensors, cameras, LiDARs, radars, right? Internal sensors for brake pressure, for temperature, et cetera, et cetera. All these are the same across each car. So the hardware stack is uniform, it's identical. It then truly becomes a software battle between the students, right? Because they're all working off of the same canvas. Now, the way we differentiate them is actually through a passing competition. So 2 and soon 3 cars sit side by side on the grid and have to, one after the other, pass, right? Pass each other at ever increasing speeds, starting at 70 miles per hour, going to 120 miles per hour, and so on, up to the point where either a car yields, or, and we don't like when that happens because we're trying to build trust, right, in autonomy, has a failure point. Now, this decision to yield is done by the AI in the car, right? And the decision on how to pass and how to operate the pass and the timing is also done by the AI in the car, right? It's important to understand that this is not remote controlled, right? There's no joysticks. As soon as the race starts, the students take their hands off the laptops and then the cars drive themselves entirely.
Right. It goes back to that fully autonomous aspect of this whole competition. So
now, we've been doing this for 3 years already, and I mean, we've accumulated a good number of records. One of the ones I like to refer to is the land speed record for an autonomous vehicle.
Okay.
So we went to the largest piece of concrete in North America, which is the Kennedy Space Runway.
Okay.
And we set the land speed record with the Italian car, Team Polywood, right? Now they have Michigan State University and University of Alabama participating.
Okay.
And they reached 192.2 miles per hour going in a straight line. But the fastest overtake between 2 AI cars was 174 miles per hour.
So, and this is kind of just part of a history of innovation in car racing. I mean, you and I were talking before, this carbon fiber was created as a race car innovation, for example. Where do we, this, Kristof, Erik, this question goes back to you. Where do we hope to take this now that we've established this through, starting in 2021? Where do you want to see this go in the future? What other innovations or revolutions could come out of this?
I'll take that question, and before answering, I'll make some more advertising for our country. So, because it's part of the answer to the question that you just asked. So, Belgium has a couple of sovereign wealth funds, amongst which SFPIM, which also owns SAPCA and SONACA. There is no plane in the world that flies without those components. We also have LRM, which is the Limburgse Reconversiemaatschappij. Few people know that company that also owns drone ports, they actually deliver the steel for this truck of Tesla. What's the name again? This big Tesla truck.
The Cybertruck.
The Cybertruck. So it's Belgian materials in there. And in the south we have a Wallonie Entreprendre who are also known because they own Van Herstal, which is one of the most advanced weaponized systems manufacturers. Now, why do I bring these things forward? Is because, and lastly, also FPIM, but also the governments, are very big investors in the insurance business. We'll go directly back when we start talking why autonomous AI is important for insurance. I'm going to hand that question back to Marc in a second. So, where do you take this? What we know, and the CEO and the president, Paul Mitchell, says it often, so from the EIC, so actually Marc is boss. He also reports it to the board all the time. People are very good at moving at slow speed. Human beings are very bad at moving at high speed. Now, what we need to make sure is that when you look around this entire show, a lot of things here, it's actually very slow speed. Now, if you want to get into manufacturing more efficiency, knowing that labor participation is going down, you need to master high speed. This initiative is all about autonomous, very high speed. The moment you control that, you control all the rest. Because it's easier to place something down than to speed it up. And everybody who is an engineer and in innovation knows that. At a certain moment you say your cap, and we said we are going to go above 70 miles an hour. Everything above 70 miles an hour, that's our playground. That is where we are. Now, this brings me back to the insurance part, which I want to hand over to Marc to talk about what we are doing with black boxes, product insurance, because I think a lot of the people watching are going to be super interested. While what we are doing is actually, it's nice to have the fastest robots on Earth and have 400 PhDs working on this and a lot of military applications. But from actually when the world becomes fully autonomous robots, what does that mean for the insurance business, which by the way, guys, it's 4% of the gross domestic product. If something goes wrong there, you feel this. So Marc, I would like you to elaborate a little bit on that, to take a little bit away just from the robot aspect.
Yeah, sure. I can speak on that briefly. I mean, when you look at an autonomous vehicle, there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, the fact that there are two main components, a robotics platform and a software platform. And if you're able to split the AI driver from the robotics platform, you're essentially able to have any company provide the AI driver, and then another company provide the robotics platform, meaning that you can create black box technology that doesn't infringe on the IP of the autonomous technology. And that would allow, for example, insurers to do a root cause analysis of what went wrong in a crash without having to mess with the autonomous mobility provider of that car. You could also find lots of scenarios where, in case of high-speed encounters where a risk happens, the AI driver could take over and actually prevent the human from getting into a crash.
Sure.
Or taking it even in the future, you could see, let's say, almost like a superintendent AI driver that would take over the other AI driver if it sees it, glitching or actually going out of control or doing something unexpected. But I really want to send it back to Kristof to talk a bit about my Flanders and about all the stuff that happens with talent, because one of the most important parts of the IAC as a not-for-profit is getting STEM talent and getting the next generation of young children, young kids, right, who want to get into technology but don't really know how.
Yeah.
Give them a path and give them a vision. And I mean, Flanders has an amazing amount of students, of universities that actually do that.
Perfect topic to wrap
Absolutely,
this
and
thing
there's
up
something
on.
that we
talk about gaming too, because one of the other tracks that we are working on is to actually race against the robots in a gaming environment.
Yeah.
Belgium is big in gaming, but
Yeah. So that STEM indeed for the government, for the Flemish government, but also the federal government is extremely important just to make sure that we keep that edge compared to neighboring countries, but also within Europe, that we have that engineering schools and those skills that are necessary in order to really push things forward. And that's basically that's been the policy for the last 20, 30 years, Chris, and it's going to continue to be the policy. So there's going to be a lot of, for instance, what's happening with the Indy Autonomous racing is these are things, also gaming, entertainment. It's not only about that. It's about the skill set that you have behind it, and make sure that people are attracted to learn those skills, and whatever works basically. So that it can attract and it can stimulate and accelerate those kind of development of skill sets, and that's basically what the government wants to do. And we have a lot of budget for that. So that's something that we really want to maintain, because that makes a difference. Unfortunately, Chris, in Belgium, that part of Europe, we don't have oil. We don't live.
we have beer and chocolate.
LNG. Yeah. So what we have is brains,
Yeah.
and we just got to make sure that we keep those brains in mint condition, and that's basically how you do it. So,
Yeah.
So a lot of research projects, as Erik mentioned, a lot of funding available for R&D, and making sure that people are aware of it and attracted to do that. So make it challenging, make it clear how it's going to change the future.
So it's
Make it relevant.
It's a story of talent. It's a story of innovation, as you said earlier on, Erik. It's a story of friendship as well. I like seeing how this partnership has evolved. I appreciate all three of you gentlemen jumping on here today at Automate Live. Where can people continue to follow this journey?
Yeah, I'll start with the Indy Autonomous Challenge. It's very simple. It's indyautonomouschallenge.com. We'll be live streaming our race on September 6th. So make sure to tune in, and I'll give it to Kristof to give the link for Flanders.
If you want to know more about Flanders, I'd say investinflanders.be will be the place to discover what we have as an ecosystem. So, and specifically on AI, we do have a lot to offer. So maybe, it's worth your while to visit that.
Excellent. Well, Kristof, Erik, Marc, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you,
We'll
Chris.
be right back to close out the show for the day here at Automate Live. Cheers, folks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.